commission. Obviously, permits have slowed to non-existent, not even a crawl. There aren't any new permits coming in. So we're taking the opportunity to work on some different creative projects we've had in the slate, whether it's a parks video project, whether it's a production guide booklet we're putting together, whatever it might be. Taking that opportunity, like a lot of other businesses probably should do, to internalize and examine what business practices you're doing and how you can better your processes or do some things you normally don't have time to do.
Yeah, and our offices are structured a little differently. We are a public-private. You are actually all public.
Yeah.
You're part of the county. We being Hillsborough County, only represent 4 municipalities.
Yeah.
So we have unincorporated Hillsborough County, Temple Terrace, Plant City, and of course the city of Tampa. We made a sweeping declaration on Friday that we were suspending permits. Your office hasn't done that, and I think it's worthwhile explaining why and how you're structured separately.
Yeah, so we actually work with 24 separate municipalities within Pinellas County. And it's each one of those individual municipalities that when we get a permit request that comes in, that we send to those individual cities to ask permission or to coordinate whatever the permits might be. And so, for us, there aren't any permits coming in now, so it doesn't really matter. But if somebody happened to send something in, we would check with a certain municipality and see if there was still something able to be shot. Do they have less than 10 people? Are they just going to be in a park, 2 people sitting on a bench having a conversation, whatever it might be. Now, the city of St. Pete has come out right now and said, no permits, we're not doing anything right now. And for the most part, what are you gonna shoot? People like to shoot on the beaches. Well, beaches are closed, so there's nothing you can do there. So while we haven't made that, declaration, it's kind of been made for us just by the situation as it is. And once, life starts to get back to normal, we're ready to jump back in and do things, as they can be.
What are you doing to keep your staff busy? Obviously, you're jumping in where you can to help other departments, but as far as just the film commission at large, what are you doing with your staff?
Yeah, we've got, like I said, some video projects that we're putting together. So now is the time to get out there and sort of start, me with the camera, Lisa in our office with the camera, and go out and start shooting. Declan's our creative guy, so we just get him the footage and he can edit. And so we've got some little projects like that we're putting together. Some strategies that we've been working on implementing, sort of, writing out what those strategies are, getting more organized with certain things that we want to do, just finding what we can to, keep busy for the time being.
Yeah. Glenn, how has your business been disrupted so far?
Its clients are kind of slowing down in terms of just the frequency of work, right? So most of my clients are ad agencies themselves. They'll call me up and they'll say, hey, we need some help with some copywriting. We need some help with some concepting. So if their clients are kind of hitting pause, then, my clients are hitting pause. So I'm getting a lot of emails from people saying, well, we've got some things in the works. We're just waiting for the all clear. We're waiting for, some things to happen. So I'm just taking advantage of the time by working on stuff for myself, kind of a aspiring a screenwriter. So I'm, writing screenplays. I've written 2 shorts since like March 8th. I'm working on my own website, working on my own side gig stuff. And I think agencies are probably, would be best like if they did that as well, right? Like if you're an agency, what's the thing you are able to do the least is working on your own stuff, right? So evaluate, take a look at your website, take a look at your self-promotions, because, this will kind of shake out at some point. Like there is light at the end of this tunnel. So like to Tony's point, like look within, evaluate what you guys are doing with your company culture, your org chart, all of those things, and say, how can we be better, not just better prepared, but just better as an organization once the economy is back to normal. And it's going to take a while for the economy to get back to normal, but at least you'll have kind of like a reset for when that happens, right? Work on your own website, work on everything that you don't get a chance to work on day to day because you're so busy working on stuff for your clients.
Yeah. So a question that comes from the production side, but also the creative agency side. What are some best practices to communicate to potential clients during this time when there might be a lot of fear? They had their marketing plans set up for this month, next month, and now they're all on hold and they're just spiraling in their head. Like, what is going to happen? How are we going to keep in contact with our customers?
Right.
So from a creative agency or from the production side, if you were, bidding on these jobs and you would have been working with these clients, what can you be telling those clients to ease those fears?
You can tell them that, again, this is all going to pass. at some point this is going to pass, and this is going to be a footnote in history. It's going to be a big one, but it will be a footnote. And there's a lot that we can learn from this. How can we be better prepared if something like this happens again, right? Because now we're all probably thinking like, this could happen again. You know, we were talking before about Bill Gates warning the world, like something like this could happen. Well, guess what? We should have listened to the genius because something like this is happening. So if it happens again, you know, I think everybody will have some sort of like emergency plan in place. In terms of, you know, production slowing down, all those types of things, we can talk to our clients. We can communicate with our clients. This is why the internet is so valuable, right? As a resource. It's not just this sort of like everyday distraction, but it really is a tool for connection. And we should be connecting with our clients now, having virtual discussions, Google Hangouts, whatever it is, you know, WebEx, conference calls, and just start to think big picture about brands, about, you know, our systems, about the things that we can be doing to help people get through this as companies. Look what Louis Vuitton's doing, right? And they transferred all of their production facilities from fragrance to antibacterial, Purell type stuff, right?
Breweries have done the same thing.
Yeah.
So instead of making alcohol, they're making
right.
Hand sanitizer, that's the word.
Hand sanitizer,
So
yes.
this is just sort of like when you think about like the Super Bowl, right? You hear about all these brands are kind of like doing these war rooms with like, let's get everybody together and get on Twitter and Instagram and see if we can take advantage, see if we can have our Oreo moment, right? People should be doing that now in terms of sort of like, what can we be doing as companies, as brands to come together and do things that are going to be useful and helpful to people? Because that's what the world's watching, right? Like, don't turn this into a creative brief and say, how can we create a coronavirus idea? Like, that's BS. People are going to call you out on that. But what can you do to actually, as an organization, if you have the resources, to help people get through this?
Yeah, that's great advice because I just from a consumer standpoint, you really do become associated with certain brands in your life, and you don't want to be taken advantage of at any time, right?
Right.
I think that people that their first instinct is to try to spin their way out of this disaster through gimmicky marketing,
Right.
Will come off as disingenuous. So when you have like breweries honestly switching out their production lines to focus on hand sanitizer, that comes off as an authentic community response, right? They're trying to act in the community's best favor at a truly community one-to-one level, and I think that's something that's fabulous. And I think more companies should be looking at that type of a strategy in this time.
Yeah, I mean, this is a time when resourcefulness, creativity are really important. You know, you can kind of show the world how inventive you can be, you know, because we're always,
okay.
You know, because we're always, you know, talking about how can you actually work inside the box, right? We're always talking about like, think outside the box. Well, now we're all being forced inside this box. We have fewer resources maybe to work with because we can't get together and put on a production, right? One of the best Super Bowl commercials I ever saw was for FedEx, and it was all type, and it was about how, we had this commercial planned, and you know, but we used a different company to ship the tape or something like that. So now all we have is this, right? We should have used FedEx. That was brilliant, right? You know, what can you do if you have nothing but, you know, an idea and a computer? You know, can you use B-roll? Can you use just super and type? Get resourceful. And I think it's possible for people to do that.
So bouncing off that resourceful last comment, we actually do have some live comments right now from our studio audience. Very excited. So the first question here, what can we do on our free time now that we have so much of it? So Tony, I'll start with you.
Yeah, well, there's a few things you can do. You know, if you've got a computer, like you were saying, you've been writing, write, you know, especially if you're, you know, we talk about the production community, so much of what people do locally is commercial type of production, but the, you know, creatives, you know, write short films, start working on that feature film. If you've always wanted to start that web series or that podcast, now is the time to do it. You can do it from home. No reason you can't focus something on whatever, you know, a lot of times when people are starting out making an indie film or something like that, they write to the resources they have. So if the resources you have are just whatever you have in your home, and you've got a camera, you got a cell phone, there's no reason you can't be making something in your own house and throwing it up on YouTube or Vimeo or whatever platforms, you know, you want to use.
Yeah. And, you know, people always say, I want to do a podcast or I want to be a vlogger. I think this is a perfect time to start doing some of those things and maybe see if you can connect with people that are also at home. And St. Pete and Tampa in general have a very strong user-generated content community.
Yeah.
I think across all platforms. I don't know if this is still true today, but a couple of years ago, we were actually told by Google at one point that we were one of the epicenters for community-generated content. I think that has a lot to do with, MacDill Air Force Base, large concentration of transient people trying to connect with each other.
Weather makes a big factor too.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think spend time with your family. We're being forced to do that, right? We're being forced to actually like have meals with our families. Reconnect with the people closest to you. If you're stuck inside, if you're having to, sort of quarantine, if there's this lockdown, just kind of reconnect with your wife, your kids, your spouse, whoever it is, your dog, and just kind of appreciate the fact that you're getting to spend time together, because again, once this, we hit the all clear, there's going to be a demand for what we do, and we're probably not going to see our families for a while, right? So take advantage of that time.
So another question from our audience out there: what should we be communicating to our clients? What should we be telling them to be doing right now to prepare for whenever this malaise ends?
Yeah, well, anyone in the production world knows that the production is made in pre-production. So if you have things that have been canceled or postponed and those things are going to be coming up again, do all the pre-production that you can right now. Like, get the pre-production ready. There's no reason, there's no excuse to not be prepared to just jump in and go once things are ready to roll. So if you're not doing pre-production now for projects, I mean, what are you doing?
Yeah. And what if, from a film commission standpoint, what have you done, Tony, to communicate to clients that might have pushed or canceled to ensure that they know you're still going to be here when this is all finished?
Yeah, again, that's the beauty of being part of county government. We're not closing up shop and disappearing. We just let people know that we're here and we're waiting. And as soon as sort of the all clear is given, we're ready to roll when they are. Our staff is still working 40 hours a week, and we're in there making sure that everything is going to be going smoothly once we get hopefully hammered with a million permits coming in all at once.
Yeah. Glenn, I know you talked a little bit about what people can be doing right now, but what should people be looking to do once this crisis ends?
I think, right, it really depends on the industry you're in. So if you have a client that is in an industry that's really been affected by this, whether it's travel, tourism, dining, whatever it is, help them get through this short term, but really be looking long term. It's like, what does this business, what does this industry look like once we get past this? This is the time really for people to slow down and talk about the ideas that they never had time to talk about, the insights that they might have been missing before, because we're always moving at such an accelerated speed that we often miss certain things that are just like right there in front of us. This is really a good time for us to kind of take a step back and look at our own industry, look at our processes, and see how we can be better coming out of this. Because when we do come out of this, people are going to be looking for better. They're going to be looking to spend money. They're going to be looking to get out, and they're going to be looking for companies that responded well to this, but are also ready to take on all that business once we get out of this. And I think it's just get a chance to talk to your clients and come up with idea generations, like you say, like pre-production. It's like, how many ideas can we generate, and which ones are the best ones to activate once we come out of this?
Yeah. If I'm a small business owner, actually, I'm getting a high sign from folks. We're going to take a quick 2-3 minute break. Just to reset, we're going to have guests in here for the next, couple hours, and we'll be right back.
Commercial break.
Gotcha.
Come to you guys in 3, 2, 1.
All right, welcome back, everybody. Again, my name is Tyler Martin Olich, Film Commissioner for Hillsborough County.
All right, welcome back, everybody. Again,
We are here, I think we get a little feedback. We're here today to just talk about the industry at large in Tampa Bay, see where everyone's at. We've got a couple of different voices. We'll be streaming for the next hour and a half or so. A lot of great guests. If you saw the last segment, we had Tony Armour, Film Commissioner from Hillsborough County. And joining us again right now is Glenn Hoskin, freelance creative director. But now joining us is George Zwerko, creative director from Rumbo Creative Agency and Three Chairs Media. Say hi, George.
Hey guys, how's everybody doing?
That's fantastic, buddy. So we'll start with you. Same question I used to begin the last segment. How are you personally doing through this crisis?
Hanging in there. It's become the new normal. Balancing, the kids and the family and trying to figure out our work schedules is pretty much has been our biggest challenge. My wife and I have come up with a system where we take shifts. So I'll have the morning shift to work, and then she's got the kids, and then I'll take the afternoon shift so she could work, and then family time. So it was really important for us to come up with a schedule. We did that right off the bat. As soon as schools were closed, we had to try to figure out how to do our jobs as well as keep the kids entertained, engaged, keep activities, keep everything going so that their schedule doesn't change too abruptly.
Yeah. A lot of industries, I think, are more versatile, working from home or in a mobile state. What have you been doing with your own staff and other coworkers, both through Three Chairs and Rumbo, just to make sure everyone's still productive and they're still clocking in the hours, so to speak?
It's a real interesting question. I think the one thing that separates us from a lot of our peers in the industry is we went through the first recession, the Great Recession. So for us to work remotely or get used to working remotely, it's nothing new for us. We changed our business model right after we went through this the first time. We knew that we had to be flexible. We knew we had to be nimble. We knew we had to cut our overhead at the beginning because we anticipated that we were going to go through this again. I think after the first Great Recession, it was already some chatter about that it was going to happen, and it was going to happen soon. So we had been anticipating something was coming. We didn't anticipate this. This is definitely something we're trying to get used to. But I think we were better prepared for it. So working from home was nothing new. Being remote was nothing new. A lot of our teams in Nashville and South Carolina. This is kind of our normal day to day. So we were really prepared for it.
I'll pitch you a question we used last segment. Glenn gave some good insight in how he's communicating with clients and some suggestions for how clients can still stay in touch with their own consumers, whatever their product might be. From your standpoint, what are you telling your clients, and what would you suggest to other clients to be doing right now as far as marketing?
We're telling our clients not to stay quiet. Don't ghost your customers. If anything, your customers need to continue to hear from you. They need to feel reassured. I think as an advertiser, you provide a glimmer of hope for people that are right now working from home. They're feeling isolated. If they're getting reassuring messages from you, I think that helps them get through their day-to-day. So we're telling clients to find new ways. We're devising new strategies with our clients to continue that line of communication. Maybe it's a shift in how we approach media. Maybe it's a shift on how we think about media consumption. Maybe it's realigning our what our strategy was for the year and what our budgets were for the year and reallocating those things. But definitely telling our clients just to stay in front of your customers, just keep those lines of communication, but maybe we're changing what we're saying. Maybe our messages are a lot more empathetic to their situation, to your customer situation. I think there's a level of, it feels genuine when you can communicate with your customers in a way that gives them a sense of relief. So we're telling them just maybe let's look at your communications platform. Let's look at your media buys. Let's look at your spend, and let's just realign things. But definitely, let's not go quiet.
And just asking, I don't want to put you on the spot as a representative, so to speak, of AdFed and Ad2, but what is going on right now, and I'll bring Glenn into the conversation as well, just amongst the various creative agencies in the Tampa Bay area? Are you guys talking to each other, or are you trying to support each other through this time, or is everyone just siloed at the moment?
No, there's a lot of chatter. A lot of us are reaching out, especially I heard Glenn earlier. He said, as you know, a lot of his customers are other ad agencies, and that's the same thing for Roombo. Roombo's, you know, we're a multicultural agency, and so we provide that service to a lot of our agency partners. And so we've been speaking, we've been talking, and trying to reassure ourselves, you know, each other that we're going to get through this. But how can we get through this together? And then how can, again, to my earlier point, collectively come up with a plan for your customers, and even for your agencies and for your staff? What can we do to learn from one another and be a resource for one another?
Sure.
So there's been a lot of chatter, there's been a lot of talk.
And to bring Glenn back in conversation, have you experienced the same thing?
Yeah, again, a lot of the agencies I work with, they are all working from home, and they're all trying to figure out how to, you know, keep the lines of communications open with their clients and really help their clients through this. Because again, to George's point, you know, we are, as agencies, we're built for this. Like this is nothing new for us. You know, you go to a lot of large agencies and, you know, people clock in the morning, right? They say hello. And then what do they do if they have the availability or they have the resources? They grab their laptop and they go down to a coffee shop because they want to get out of the office, right? It's like the distraction of the office is actually worse than the distraction of the coffee shop. Now, if you're a freelance creative like myself, like Starbucks is to go only. My office is closed, essentially. Like, where the hell am I going to go if there's no Starbucks? So it's really just helping your clients to get through this, and you know, helping your people get through this. Again, if you're slowing down, how do you look at your people and say, okay, what can you do to better yourself, right? If there's a new application that you wanted to learn, go do that. Right? You know, take the time to, you know, invest in your own resources as an agency and let your people get better at what they do. Maybe even if you have the money, help pay for it. So you want to take an online class, take an online class.
Yeah.
You know, we want you to be stronger and better when all of this shakes out.
We'll get into education here in a second, but there is one question I want to ask the both of you. So far, we've been talking more broadly about what any creative agency, if you're suffering through this issue, you know, what you can do. But let's talk specific to Tampa Bay. We're geared, we have always been geared to be primarily a commercially focused market. You know, we have some Swift business with unscripted TV and certainly the occasional independent feature, but our bread and butter is commercials. Anecdotally, do you guys think once this crisis ends, a lot of the larger clients are going to come roaring back, let's say as end of April, knock on wood, we hope, or in May? Or do you think there's going to be some lingering stagnation in how businesses sort of retool and get back online?
Yeah, if I can jump on that, I think we're going to see a little hesitation. And the only reason I say that is because when we went through the first recession, the Great Recession, that's exactly what happened. The economy started to bounce back. Things were starting to change. Everybody was still feeling good. We thought the market was going to bounce back immediately, and it didn't. It took a little while to get some momentum. I think we're going to experience that again. I think clients are just going to be a little skeptical. They're going to be concerned that this may come back around. They want to be better prepared for when it does, which doesn't mean that we can't retool and rethink better ways for them to spend those production dollars. I just think it's going to be important for us to be prepared to make the suggestion that if you're not going to do the full-on big production, that there's other ways that we can go ahead and create some really strong content. We may just have to devise a different strategy. It might be whether it's how it's designed or where it's placed and what's our media channels. But I think this is the opportunity, to Glenn's point earlier again, that this is a good time for us to kind of step back as advertisers to rethink what are some of the ways that we can change how we service our clients so that we could help them get through this and get the momentum back when all this subsides.
Yeah, great advice. Anything else you'd like to add, Glenn?
Yeah, I agree with George. I think clients, as you know, they're always looking to do is how do they maximize their budgets, right? How can we get the most bang for the buck? I think you'll start to see productions coming back, but it won't be to the scale that we usually like the productions to be. It's going to be more about snackable content. What can we do on the cheap, right? So it's going to be a lot of tabletop stuff. It's going to be a lot of Instagram stuff. It's going to be a lot of things that maybe can, be shot with a phone. I think because people will be getting resourceful and they're going to be looking to those, forms of communication. And I think they're maybe through this, they're going to get used to that, and they might go, oh, wow, look how much stuff we were able to produce remotely, virtually, without having to spend a lot of money on production. And I think we'll kind of see that happen because, again, we're all communicating and connecting through the internet. We're all looking at all the social platforms. And I think clients are going to somehow become more comfortable with that, and we'll see maybe more production like that as the economy slowly starts to bounce back.
Sure. So let's bring this down from the top level and really get into the below the line issues that a lot of our freelancers are facing right now. The folks that aren't necessarily interacting with clients, they're dependent on production companies to bring them jobs during the month. They're all on hiatus for this foreseeable future, and they are probably not as insulated as the production company or creative director owners are. What should they be doing right now? I mean, I think the human instinct is to curl up in the fetal position and cry about it, but we can't do that. So what should the freelancer be doing right now to either acquire the jobs they can? What can they do remotely? Should they be looking at secondary certifications or educational opportunities they have right now? What can they be doing right now?
George, you want to take that?
Yeah, I think, Tyler, you hit something on the head. When I would look for those educational opportunities, I would look for ways to further my craft, better my craft. I would also be open to maintaining a communication with those production partners, the people that were giving you the job, and be open to redefining some of the things that you could be doing, like providing additional services. Maybe it's outside of your scope or outside of your wheelhouse, but be willing to maintain that line of communication. I think that's going to be vital, especially when all this subsides. You want to stay top of mind. You want to be first on the list when a production happens. But I think if you can take this opportunity just to kind of better your craft and maybe even learn some additional things to help take you out of a siloed wheelhouse, I think that's only going to be beneficial for you in the long run.
Yeah, I think you might also see a lot of people in our industry looking to other industries. So many people, especially on the advertising side, so many people actually fall into advertising, right? And because of the way that media has shifted over the past few years, a lot of the people being brought into the agency world are people who weren't necessarily educated on advertising, right? Blog writers and podcasters, and agencies are looking for people who are coming from places that are kind of unconventional. So those folks kind of didn't come into advertising through advertising. They came in through other channels, and they, are probably smart enough, hopefully, to think about, well, if I don't have an agency gig when this all shakes out, like, I still have the ability to go and monetize my skills elsewhere. Yeah. And you might see a lot of people who maybe lost jobs not come back. I think it's going to be a challenge for some agencies that are already losing, talent to the Googles of the world and the Netflixes of the world, right? It's going to be a challenge for a lot of, especially bigger agencies, to kind of get that talent back because they were already starting to lose it. So it's going to be a challenge there. For the individuals themselves, again, to George's point, like, educate yourself if you have the time to educate yourself. Pick up a new skill for your toolkit. Work on your craft and work on yourself. I think you can also see a lot of maybe small agencies pop up, and they might not be advertising agencies or branding agencies, but you're going to all of a sudden have all these people kind of floating out there going, where's the work going to come? And they're going to be like, well, maybe we should create our own thing and start getting our own work and kind of having a better sense of security for the next time this happens. So you might see some, new shops pop up.
Yeah. And just to answer the question myself, getting the high sign again. Oh yeah, please, Frank.
The question is from Daniel Bruno. For freelancers and single members LLCs, are they able to apply for small biz help in Florida or federal, even if they don't technically have employees?
The question was what financial mechanisms might be available to small business owners. George, is there anything you're looking at in particular you might recommend from the last financial crisis?
Yeah, we've been in communication with our current lenders just to see what is available to us, if they're going to be changing any of their policies. So we started communicating with them first, and then starting to look at additional resources like the SBA is created a loan. It's a small business loan. I think it starts at 50,000, but you have to have a minimum of 2 employees in order to qualify. The paperwork is really easy to do. So that's another resource that we're going to look at. We're going to explore that just to kind of create a reserve and just be prepared to carry us over any humps if we come across anything like that. But the SBA is always a great resource and a great place to start, especially for small business.
Yeah, and just to provide some additional resources, I know the state has just activated some emergency small business bridge loans. I don't know what the pre-qualifier is as far as how many employees you need, but if you go to Phil Tampa Bay's website, we can certainly make that information available to you guys. Though, it's just, I'm not a financial advisor. I would caution about taking too much extra debt on in this time, especially when you might have to run lean and mean coming out of this. So a quick cash infusion might not be the best choice during this time. My own personal opinion, again, I'm not a financial advisor, seek additional counseling. Was there any other questions, Frank? No? Okay. I had a question in my head, now I forgot about it. To answer the previous educational question, just some advice I gave personally to 2 freelancers that contacted me this week. One was a makeup artist. I suggested this is a great time to be doing tutorial videos. You know, you're home with your kids, put them on camera, show them how to do makeup, be out there, create content. And for a videographer, I suggested reaching out to some small businesses. This could also be a great time to be making new contacts, show them the value of marketing. Do some really quick and cheap or free social media content for some of your favorite local businesses. They need the help. You're getting your name out there. You're still shooting something. You can be creative as long as you can do it safely per CDC guidelines. But there's a lot of ways that you can still be active in the community. And with that, we're going to take a quick break. So we'll wrap this up. We'll be back in a few minutes with some more guests. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
All right, welcome back, everybody. Again, my name is Tyler Martinovich, Film Commissioner for Hillsborough County. I'm looking this way. We previously had Glenn on the show, but we've brought back Tony Armour, Film Commissioner for St. Pete Clearwater. And then joining us on the line this time around, we have Paul Jauregui, internationally known artist, who is joining us from Ecuador. So we're getting international this segment. We'll talk a little bit about what is going on in other countries. But to start, the same question I've been asking everybody, Paul. How are you personally doing through this crisis?
Well, listen, I'm just, as an artist, keeping creativity alive, understanding that life is a big sport. You know, it can throw you a fastball when you never expect it, and you have to react. So I live 30 minutes outside of Quito, right in the boonies. So if there's any little problems with communication, internet is slow here, but you know, the will is big.
Yeah.
I'm staying busy, writing down, sketching ideas, touching up some paintings, inventing new techniques like an alchemist, just mixing up glue with different textures, just having a good time with my kids. I mean, they are doing homeschooling right now. We keep them actually a lot more busier than what I would like, but we live in nature, so we enjoy just making little things extraordinary. That's our focus right now.
Yeah. So they say all crises are local, right? You look to yourself and what's going on in your immediate vicinity. I'm ashamed to say I couldn't tell you what the Ecuadorian response to this crisis has been. What sort of measures have been taken in Ecuador to sort of stem the tide of this virus?
Actually, you know, the government has acted very firm, actually very, very firm. And we're keeping our cases of coronavirus very low, the death very limited. So I think for, you know, being Latinos and third world party animals, I mean, we are keeping it pretty safe, which I'm very proud of it. So I think we're coping it. It's going to be okay. You know, as Glenn mentioned at the beginning, this is like a renewal, a world renewal. I see a lot of good things coming out of this renovation, and creativity has to be on top of the knot after this. We got to be prepared.
Yeah.
Good things are.
I think most fine artists are a little more insulated from this in the respect that they're not having to adapt to working from home all of a sudden, right? I mean, you're more or less basically on your own, writing your own creative thoughts. How, if any, has this been disruptive to your own creative process, or has this given you an opportunity to be more creative?
Well, you know, actually, Tucker, I'm supposed to get on a plane this Sunday, and I had a beautiful event in St. Petersburg in Great Explorations Museum, a fundraiser for a project I'll be launching in the U.S. So my creative insights had to become very practical in readjusting to the circumstance. I have a project on conservation based on frogs as thermometers for climate crisis and nature devastation, something pretty strong and really focused to children 0 to 10 years, as the Great Explorations Museum is. So I had to not only say, okay, this will be postponed until who knows when, but try to keep this idea alive, you know, thinking of creative ways through internet, a little bit of e-commerce here and there, because, you know, we artists have a roller coaster financially all the time.
Yeah.
So we have to be a step ahead of the game. So knowing that my event was postponed, I've been in touch with the museum, which has been very gracious and very empathic with me, just understanding that we won't stop. There is this, you know, we're totally sure that this project will not stop because of this break. Actually, you'll catch more energy, and that's what we're doing right now.
Yeah.
Just trying to keep our potential donors, invites informed, and the world informed that this will happen. And on my side, I keep on doing through internet, checking technologies, mixing analogic with digital to see how this can be successful.
Yeah, that's interesting about the technology aspect and how fine artists can move into that. And I want to get into that in a second, but we do have a question from the audience.
We do. We have citizens from Ecuador wanting to talk to Tony about what you guys are doing locally to keep the film incentives going, to keep projects moving forward when we get out of this rut, and how that translate into international? Will people travel internationally to continue their films?
Okay. Let's repeat the question real quick, since it was given off camera. The question is actually coming from Ecuador, so thank you, Paul, for bringing an international audience with you. We appreciate that. But the question was to Tony, what are we doing as a community, particularly your community, to, one, keep the lights on, two, ensure that we do have incentives going forward, and three, how are we preparing for international clients to come back to us?
Yeah, well, people may or may not know that my office, the St. Pete Clearwater Film Commission, is actually a part of the tourism office for Pinellas County. So we're part of Pinellas County government. And the way that we are funded is through the hotel bed tax. So all the money that we have in our budget for this fiscal year right now, it's already in there because it came from last year's bed tax. So as soon as this crisis is over, we have our incentive money, sitting there and ready to go for any projects that want to come to the area. So just be a matter of, how soon is travel freed up and people are able to travel? Do they have their productions ready? What can we do? So we're ready. We're kind of standing by once life gets back to semi-normal to have those projects come and have our incentive plan in place. And then moving forward, say for next year, because obviously, budgets are probably going to drop and decrease. While our budget may decrease some as far as the incentive program goes, it's still going to be there and it's still ready to help projects out. And the way that we're structured, since we're doing 10% of whatever projects come to the area, I think we're going to have enough money to still be able to keep moving forward with that program and just be ready to go when everyone else is.
And not to put you on a spot, and certainly you don't have to quote me an exact number, but how much do you think the total business coming into Pinellas just for films is coming from international countries?
I would say our commercial business for films, or for our commercial business in general, that comes in international, is it can be pretty decent. We get projects from the UK and Germany and some from South America, but we've not really had much as far as independent film or film industry goes. But we're open and willing to have them here if anybody wants to come. Whatever we can do, we're ready to go.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's turn this back to art and how this is affecting not just the film industry, but really any industry. And to stick with Tony just for a second, you have the Sunscreen Film Festival that was supposed to be coming up in a few weeks.
Yeah.
I had the Gasparilla International Film Festival that was supposed to be this week. Both of us have not canceled, but deferred our dates to a time to be decided. How was that communicating to those people that were hoping to come and enjoy these festivals, get their films screened? Are we looking at new dates for
Yeah,
Sunscreen?
it was interesting. So it was kind of, this past Sunday when things really fell apart, because at that point we had actually sent an email out earlier in the day saying, hey, right now, all our museums are still open and Disney's still open and all this other stuff is kind of good to go. So we're still there. Or maybe it was Friday before all that kind of stuff was announced. But, the measuring bar was, look, Disney's still open. If Disney's open, it must be safe because, that's a big company that doesn't want to take any risks. And not, an hour after we send that email out, Disney is closing, everything shuts down. And so we really had to shift gears there. And then it becomes, when do you move to? A big part of it's the theaters. AMC Theaters in St. Pete at the Sundial there is the venue. Well, if the theaters aren't open, there's not much you can do.
Yeah.
So, we've, of course, had to communicate first with the theaters and find out, what they were looking at doing. And obviously they've shut down for, could be up to 12 weeks or something like that. But the bottom line is it's pushing until fall. Say it could be August, could be September. The nice thing is, because the festival is going to be happening April 30th to May 3rd, the budget was in place. The money's there, so it's just sitting in the bank, waiting to run the event. So the event can run as planned, and the communication that we've received from all the filmmakers has been very positive. They're excited for once, they can kind of get on with their lives and actually come and do something with their films at a festival. So it's, dates to be determined, but everybody is still ready to roll with it, essentially.
Yeah. Oh, I got a question from the audience. Go for it.
We have a question from the United States to Ecuador.
Okay.
What are they doing, and does Paul know how they're going to keep the incentives going so people will travel to Ecuador and other countries to keep film and television going?
Oh, interesting. Paul, we have a question from the audience, U.S. to Ecuador. What, if anything, have you heard from the government or local production companies or other artists? what are they doing to ensure that business is still traveling to Ecuador, coming to you during this crisis? Anything you can relate?
Well, something that the government has done is just try to keep precautions. I mean, the frontiers were closed, something that will probably happen to the U.S. very soon. So we haven't been able to get tourism at all. I mean, we had the process of actually sending people back home to their own countries for safety. That for once. In terms of the art world and all of the artists and production and creativity, but I have the feeling that everybody which I've talked to, because I talk to people every 2 days just to keep us strong and connected and know that we will join forces for this. Everybody's writing scripts, just, like Glenn mentioned, people are writing ideas, drafting ideas. Myself, I'm drafting a program to create job opportunities through art after this is over for local people, because many people are already losing their jobs at itself. And this is a poor country, and the economy is not strong. We don't have a real backup here. So we have to be extremely creative, resourceful. And that's what I've been planning. Just, drafting, canvas planning, writing ideas, using nature as our strength. This is one of the most beautiful countries on the planet.
Yeah.
I've been in touch with the Galapagos Islands, facing a program to bring the self-esteem of their own local artists for the cruises when they come back. Working with local artists in Quito, talking about our hummingbirds and the potential of this beautiful bird as hope for the entrepreneurs, creating products, because I have this mix of artists and I've been an entrepreneur. I was in the bar business for 30 years. But of course, I'm not drinking or going anywhere anymore. So, just using common sense to keep creativity on top of the game. The government is supportive, but they're keeping us, we cannot move from our homes, not even to the store, just in an emergency to the pharmacy. So everything is really limited to internet and to WhatsApp connections. But I see people are understanding that this is a life-changing situation that will bring hope and will clean. It's a cleanser for the planet. And we have pushed the planet so far. So we're going to bring back and start being a little more empathy, having more empathy and more sensitivity to what's happening to our people around and the world we live in.
Yeah, that's great. So you mentioned technology in a previous question, and it came up again now, to give a shout out to a local St. Pete artist that was supposed to have a gallery opening this weekend, Frank Strunk III, great metal artist. He's instead decided to do a online streaming Google Hangout art opening, where it's just gonna be him in his own workshop, walking around, watching him, through his process, showing off different pieces. So the question to you, Paul, do you think you're going to see a lot of creativity from artists in how they maintain their business and get their work out there? I mean, is that a good idea to have a Google show, so to speak?
Oh, it is a very smart idea. I think for starters, a lot of our artists, we need some more discipline as a race in this planet. The artist race. We need discipline. So I think people will start from their websites, organizing their structure of how they're going to communicate with the world. I think what this artist in St. Pete has done is amazing. That's very bright. If people cannot come to you, you just go out to them.
Yeah.
And now we have a cell phone, we have YouTube channels, we have a little bit of common sense. So I think it's a great idea of people start showing what they do. I don't know specifically their techniques, because artists are very jealous with their techniques and their stuff. But we can show our world and make people understand we have a world, and we also bring beauty to the planet, and we bring reflection to people.
Yeah. Let's switch back to education for a second, just because during the last financial crisis, I know you took the opportunity to go get your MFA.
Yeah.
I think, we were talking about this offline before we started this segment. There's going to be that happening again, where people are going to be looking at, well, I should have had a fallback plan. What was that? Maybe I go back and get a secondary degree or look at different certifications I can get. So talk about your thought process getting an MFA through the last financial crisis and what you would suggest people do through this.
Yeah, it was interesting. So it was 2012 or something like that, when everything was in the tank, and having my own business, my own production company, and everything, and business really slowing down. Is what can I do to improve myself at this time? And so that's when I decided to go back and get my MFA. And I foresee that it'll probably be a similar thing because, you know, that happened to schools got really packed basically during the last crisis because people took the opportunity to, you know, educate themselves. And I see that's going to happen again. All those people who, you know, got their education during that financial crisis, it's not like it's a new generation of people, but we will have other people that didn't do it last time, or people who've grown up enough since, you know, you're talking 8 years ago now or whatever, that they're going to need to go back to school, whatever. So I'm seeing people are going to do that. And especially now, you know, kids are having to be homeschooled, and, you know, colleges and universities are having to do all stuff online. The growth of online education has made it so that you really do have the ability to kind of do it from anywhere now.
Yeah, it was amazing. Just going off that, I did a quick Google search, certainly not exhaustive, so there's more resources out there. But just in the first Google search I did, free online classes from universities,
Yeah.
MIT, Harvard, Princeton, Carnegie Mellon, and this wasn't basic math classes. They had just the full catalog of various degrees and different disciplines that you can take advantage of. And from my understanding, again, not an exhaustive Google search, it was mostly free for a lot of these classes. Now, if you wanted a degree associated with that or a certificate associated, there might have been some costs, but most of it was basic auditing. Like, hey, can I hang out in this class? And the answer is yes.
Yeah, and I actually had just a couple minutes ago during the break posted a link, nofilmschool.com, put up a link of Ivy League schools that do film history classes that are all free for people to take.
Yeah.
So right now, if you are bored and you're quarantined, take a film history class from an Ivy League college.
Yeah, fantastic idea. Paul, just from the creative community, is there a lot of online options? You know, again, this is not my industry that I focus on most of the time. Is there a lot of YouTubers or vloggers out there that share technique and what they're doing and how they do things?
You know, what's hot right now, and it's happening worldwide, is you have a bunch of influencers, but that's because they're making money out of YouTube. But in the arts world, there is actually people are a little more traditional. They haven't crossed over, you know. Maybe the young artists are doing something which I'm not aware of yet. I haven't seen them online or anything. Our community is a little bit spread up in terms of the arts community. You have the new generation, which is in their 20s and 30s, and we have the middle-aged guys like me, 54, thinking and different things, just trying to keep it smart and keep it strategic. But I haven't heard much of the young community of artists, you know, showing up their work through internet, showing up their work through videos. But I'm sure there's something cooking. I mean, people work in silence sometimes, and then part of the strategy is know exactly when to pull it out to the world.
Yeah.
But it's not something so far, Tyler.
So let's talk again about festivals for a second. I think, you know, mentioning Disney, you know, the mouse, that's certainly the canary in the coal mine.
Yeah.
Not just from a festival standpoint, but just basic large scale gatherings. I can't tell you, just you had a similar experience that people were like, whatever Disney's doing, like if they're still open, we can stay open.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden we get the call on Friday that they were closing their parks.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you, not just festival wise, but event wise, but also clients that all of a sudden that rattled their cage more than anything else.
Yeah, I think, again, that's, you know, it's such a big part of tourism in the state of Florida. I mean, it's a huge international draw, the number of people that come through Disney on a daily basis, on an annual basis. And the last thing that they want to do is put people in danger and destroy their brand and hurt their multi-billion dollar business. So I think that'll be one of the things that everybody is going to keep an eye on is when Disney reopens, everybody else is going to go, okay,
We can breathe again.
we're good.
Yeah.
Let's roll. Everybody open up and, you know, and start running their businesses again. And that's, you know, it's kind of, like you said, the canary in the coal mine. That's what everybody is sort of looking towards and waiting for. When they make that decision, then you know everyone else is going to.
Well, unfortunately, we have to take another quick break. Paul, thank you so much for calling in from Ecuador. I can't tell you how much I'm grateful that someone from beyond our borders was willing to call into this little live stream. And thanks again, Tony, for being with us. Stay tuned, guys. We'll be back in a few more minutes with another segment with different guests. right. Welcome back, everyone. Again, my name is Tyler Martinovich, Film Commissioner for Hillsborough County. If you've been joining us all morning, we've been talking about what different people in the community have been doing to weather this storm, some best practices, some ideas for clients and agencies, creative directors, and certainly questions about what we can be doing actively to get ready for whenever this crisis ends. Joining us again is Glenn. And on the Skype line right now, we have Hernan Taglioni?
Yeah.
Okay.
You got it right.
Fantastic. Creative director working out of Orlando right now, but also works with a lot of Latin American companies. So Hernan, let's start with you. Same question I've been asking everybody. How are you doing personally through this crisis?
Well, personally, we're doing fine. We're taking precautions of everything. We have enough supplies at home. We have been very proactive for this crisis. Unfortunately, we live in a society that is very reactive, and I say it in a personal level and business level too. So my wife and I, we already took the necessary steps to be prepared for this. We have been buying enough supplies. Having an emergency kit in the worst case scenario that then you are not able to buy X amount of products and they just limit the amount. So we started a few weeks ago. We are planning to, continue buying some products between this week, between today and tomorrow. There's a lot of rumors out there of an upcoming national lockdown. I have some contacts very close to the government that they share that with me. And so, I already had a meeting with my team here in the agency in that case scenario, how we're going to be operating and the necessary steps that they need to be taken.
Yeah. It's funny, just as Floridians, I think we're mostly prepared.
Oh, yeah.
We deal with hurricanes,
Yeah,
right?
this is Hurricane COVID. This is nothing new.
Absolutely. But I think people bought the same things they would during a hurricane as opposed to this crisis, which is why you saw a run on water and toilet paper and things like that. Which I don't think we're running out of water anytime soon as a result of this. But
that's why the water and toilet paper, I don't understand what's behind it. But definitely, I always tell, just have some enough resources. In the worst case scenario, you have to expect the worst and be prepared.
Yeah.
But I have family in Latin America. My family lives in Argentina, in Buenos Aires. Over there, it's already starting last night at 12 a.m. Well, today at 12 a.m. the national lockdown. Nobody can be outside on the street. And basically, if they get you that you're outside on the street, if you're not working for a hospital or a pharmacist or a supermarket, potentially they will arrest you and take you to prison for 2 weeks up to 2 years. Wow. So they're being very serious over there. And, I also talked with my best friend from childhood, which is the first person I had the opportunity to talk that has the coronavirus. He was registered as number 3 in the country. And he just was tested positive 2 weeks ago and has been in basically quarantined in the hospital for 11 days. And now he's back at his house for another 2 more weeks.
Wow.
So he got that in Italy. He went to Italy on vacation. He loves skiing. He was in the mountains, and came back, and he was feeling a little tired. He had some fever. Decided to go to the hospital. They did all the tests, and that's how he tested positive. But so far he's good. He's one of those cases that he's 2 years younger than me. He's 44. So he's healthy. He's fine. He just had fever for a day, and then he didn't have any symptoms whatsoever.
Yeah.
So that's the scary part, that maybe you don't feel sick, or maybe you just feel like a mild type of flu, but you're carrying the virus and give it to somebody else.
Yeah.
Then he went with 2 more friends. The other one was the case number 4. And the other one never had any symptoms whatsoever. So, but once he found out that he was in the hospital, he decided to self-quarantine too.
Yeah, good practices all around. So at the very end of the last segment, we mentioned that for myself and Film Commissioner Tony Armour, from St. Pete Clearwater, who's not with us with this segment. Friday, when Disney World finally pulled the plug and said we're closing, that was the canary in the coal mine for a lot of the clients we were working with, where that was, all right, that was beyond scary that something as megalithic as Disney would respond in that way. I'm curious, just timeline wise, and this is a question to both of you, and we'll start with you, Hernan. When did this become real for both you as a company and for your clients? Like, when was the first indication that you started having that things were going to go south, there might be a slowing, and then when did everything sort of stop?
Well, definitely right the week before Disney was going to close. I have friends working for Disney, and they were sharing with me, that something like that was going to happen. So immediately, my wife and I would start being proactive and just be prepared for the worst and expect the best. And for Disney to close for at least they're saying until the end of this month, we'll see what is going to happen. This is the first time in the history. They have been closed for a couple of days in September 11, but they have never closed for 2 weeks. So that's a big sign. Also, they are by what I heard here in Orlando, that is by the Orange County Convention Center parking lot. They are trying to set up a tent for people to test coronavirus there. So I heard that there are some, officials and military trying to set up that area too.
Yeah.
So it is scary, but as long as you take the right precautions, you stay away from people, keep 6 feet away from them. If you have to go to supermarkets or the bank or pharmacies, I'm already projecting to go with the necessary precautions of having latex gloves and potentially maybe a mask on it.
Sure.
We purchase all these. We have enough. We have, latex gloves. We have masks. We purchased of these like 4 weeks ago, and we got it. Of course, we pay more than it should be, but again, you have to be prepared. You have to be proactive. That's why I suggest doing that. Have an emergency kit and make sure you have enough resources for at least 2 weeks moving forward. And this, it will take a while. The rumors that I heard in the industry that things are going to start getting back to normal, like around June, July. Those are the rumors that I heard, and I hope it's before. But everybody at the agency is aware of what's going on, and we're going to be working, remotely from home.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Glenn, let you answer that too. When did it become real for you and the clients you work with?
I think it became real not just for me and for all of our clients, but when the NCAA canceled the conference tournaments, when they said, okay, we're going to cancel those, and then we might have the actual NCAA tournament without fans. I think that's when people in this country were like, okay, S is getting real.
Yeah.
And then when they just canceled the tournament, that I think became like one of the biggest canaries, as you were saying, in the coal mine, because then you saw the NBA because players got infected. Then the NHL, then MLS, and now Major League Baseball is reacting. National Football League, like there might be an NFL draft without anybody there, right? Like how do you conduct the NFL draft? And so once all industries started to look at that, everybody else started to follow suit, because if you don't start shutting down, you look like the irresponsible one, right? You start to look greedy. So I think it became kind of real for everybody in the country when that happened. I think the NCAA.
I think the last holdout was WrestleMania.
Yeah. They just now announced that it's going to be a 2-day event, online only, and so that's going to be we are a big loss for Tampa Bay, of course.
Yeah. Hernan, we're going to close out the segment here, but I want to get one more question in with you if we can. What have you been telling your international clients? Should they pull back on marketing? Should they double down on marketing? What is your advice?
Well, my advice, I see this as an opportunity, is the rebound. Right now there's a lot of uncertainty. We have clients who are continue working together. They didn't pull back on the advertising or launching of products. Some of them, yes, in the point of view that, they are like entertainment or open to the public, from restaurants that they have to shut down. So But we also have clients from consumer goods or OTC products that they still need to advertise. Now more than ever, you're going to have a very captive audience that is at home watching TV, listen to the radio, being on the internet. So your brand, is a great opportunity to be out there and promote your brand. But there are going to be some other industries that they're going to be extremely affected by these. Some people are, already they're projecting losing some of the jobs and so forth. So it depends. It varies on the client, depending on the category. And I have some clients. They told me to go ahead and put a hold on the advertising for at least 3 weeks and some of them until mid October. Sorry, April. But yeah, you gotta take it case by case. But to advertise, definitely, this is a great opportunity to be out there and promote your brand. And the rebound, I think it's gonna be stronger. I definitely think it's gonna be stronger. And people we have to advertise. If you don't advertise, they won't purchase your products or services. So you gotta stay top of mind. But again, it's industry by industry and based on the different sectors.
Yeah, well, a semi-positive note to end on here. We're up against a hard break, but we'll be back in a few more minutes. Hernan, thank you so much for joining us this segment. Really appreciate your insights. And Glenn, thanks again for sticking around.
Sure.
Thank you. Be safe, guys. Take care.
Bye-bye.
See you.
Bye-bye.
3, 2,
Welcome back, everybody. If you've been following us along for the last 90 minutes, again, my name is Tyler Martinulich, Film Commissioner for Hillsborough County. We've been talking with a variety of guests just about how this crisis is affecting their industry, best practices, really anything we can do to get some information, some positivity out there in the world. Joining us in this particular segment, to my left, we have Gene Sudit. Did I say your last name correctly? Okay.
Perfectly.
The assistant editor of La Gazzetta magazine, the only bilingual newspaper in the area. And then on our Skype line, we have Tommy Moroz from Technica Business Systems, the director of payment services. Did I get that correct, Tom?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's it.
To start the segment off, like we've been doing every segment, I care about people and how they're doing themselves at home. Let's forget the business for a second. How are you doing personally, Gene?
I'm doing well, but because my wife is a school teacher and she's a little more anxious, I have two roles to play. I have to be calm, but also try to talk her off the ledge. And those things don't always work well together because according to my wife, my method of calming her down isn't always so calming. So it's an interesting new worry because we really haven't experienced something like this. Someone earlier was saying about how people in Florida know how to prepare for a hurricane, and we're both from New Jersey, so we don't really prepare for anything other than snow, and it's still not the same.
Different beast altogether. And Tom, how are you doing personally?
Good. Just doing some remote work. My wife also is a school teacher. She's going to start doing Google Classroom now. So apparently they got that together. And I come here. If I live in Boca, I come to Miami to Doral, a few times a week. And it's no traffic. It's the quickest I've gotten from Boca to Miami in 22 years.
Small favors, little silver linings we can find. Gene, let's start with you. This is a particularly trying time for the media at large, especially print media. You guys, and I'd say you guys, just print media in general, has been under siege, both intellectually, I think, from a certain segment of society, but also financially. It's been a trying time as people have been trying to transition away from print to online media. This has not been a great couple of weeks for ad sales, for papers. How has this affected you?
Immediately, not a whole lot, but we do see it down the road because, of course, a lot of ad buys happen ahead of time. So we've had clients, like the census, where they were advertising, but at the moment they've halted their door-to-door census taking. So that may be delayed, and restaurants, I'm sure, will want to pull back. So you need to have that cushion. And as you were saying, also, being under siege, is that not only are we fighting to allow people to know that there is still a great importance to print, but also making sure that they are aware of what credible sources of news are. People are they very easily fall into this downward spiral of whatever they get into on the internet, and they start trusting the guy down the street who knows about some lab in China that's going to war with the United States versus believing in science and what trusted media sources are. And it's not really anything about being Republican, Democrat, liberal. It's we're just trying to disseminate the best information we can, and we source our information. Yesterday there was a public official who put out onto social media that the county was basically imposing martial law. And she had to retract it very shortly. Everyone was saying, well, what's your source? But it's very dangerous. So you have to really look towards your trusted media sources, people who are in this for the right reasons, for your information.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I mean, just yesterday, or actually, I think it happened over the weekend as well. There was a huge issue with Facebook where, because they had sent most of their people home to work remotely, they didn't have the level of attention to the algorithms that they were using to block certain media sources that they would have otherwise had. And the coding slowly became corrupted. And all of a sudden you had trusted links that people were putting out there, whether it was from the New York Times or CNN, all of a sudden being blocked on Facebook, flagged as inappropriate content. And the irony is that a lot of the more screwball sources were going through no problem. And that, obviously disseminates as people share and comment on things. So that's interesting how important trusted media sources are.
Sure.
right
Well,
now.
we have libel law to answer to. John on the governmentsucks.com doesn't have anyone to answer to.
So, Tom, let me turn it to you. We are now living in an era where, working from home is the new norm. And I think a lot of companies were not as well placed as some of the larger corporations to be mobile. So from the IT side, what are some of the things that people should learn from this as far as insulating themselves and taking advantage of more streaming services or ways to connect remotely that they perhaps didn't think about prior to this?
Yeah, well, interesting enough, I worked for many years at Motorola, and 10 years ago, our bosses used to tell us, don't show up to the office unless you have a purchase order. There's been a long tradition of home-based office work for sales, in the sales industry, even decoders. Some of them were in Pakistan, some were in India, some were in Brazil. So I think it's the technology's been there for a long time. I think now with the reduction of prices, and you can get 100 megs now for $40, $50, where it used to be 2 megs for that amount. So speed is no longer an issue. Computers, laptops, the prices have gone down. I think it's more of a paradigm structural method on how you approach working from home. Some companies do not like it at all. They want to see you in the office, and they want to have this office dynamics. Obviously, some positions like HR or finance, they have to be in the office quite a bit. But many companies are realizing that it's very productive. People working at home, actually, we used to work 7, 8 p.m. Sunday evenings, I'd be doing PowerPoint. So actually, you work more hours from home than you do at the office. The key thing is to be able to establish a very separate, insulated space that is dedicated to that home office work. Otherwise, it's if the kids are interrupting, you have dogs barking, and it's not really an office. It becomes a problem.
Yeah.
So that is more. The big challenge is for you to define how you can be productive in an office, how to set it up more than the technology. The technology is there, and how you can relate to your employer that you're going to be actually working more hours and not less, and that it's a productive thing to do.
We have a question from the audience.
We have a text for Gene. Just they'll let you know, since like I said, it's a trilingual newspaper, and you guys do have publications that go out to other countries. Is there any sort of communication or messages you guys plan on sending in the newspaper that reach other people and know how we're doing in the United States?
Okay. Before you answer, Gene, let me rephrase that so people can hear the question. The question was, as a trilingual newspaper, how are you changing your messaging, or is the messaging being affected when you're talking to people outside of the United States to let them know what we're doing both as a community and as a federal government at large?
Sure. So for clarity, we're trilingual outside of the continental United States, which we have a few subscribers. I don't know if Puerto Rico counts as the mainland. Puerto Rico, we have some, but in other countries, we don't have any readership. But to answer the question, us being trilingual helps us reach out to the minority community. There are many people here who English is not their first language, or they're not English proficient. So luckily, Hillsborough County and other agencies, when they disseminate information, they're giving it to us already in Spanish. So their message isn't lost in translation. They're saying exactly what they want to say, and we're supplying that information. So certainly that's one of the great values of us, I believe, is to be able to have that outreach to the Hispanic community, minority communities, where other outlets might not be, that focused.
Yeah. Tom, to turn this back to you real quick, the last segment we mentioned that for a lot of the tourism industry, but also the production community, when Disney decided to shutter on Friday, that was sort of the canary in the coal mine that really rocked a lot of our clients. When did this become real for you and your business? And what, if any, disruption have you seen as far as interacting with clients or just on a workforce basis?
Well, at Technica, we're in a unique position since we serve what's called essential services. supermarkets, pharmacies. We serve mostly supermarkets, a lot of ethnic supermarkets. So we've been in a position to be fully staffed. Anything breaks at a register, you have to be there yesterday, you know? So it's been a lot of pressure on the professional services team. We have a great team there in 7x24. And one thing that we're looking at is the rush to purchase and to clean up the shelves. You know, it's a psychological piece. It's unlike a hurricane we've seen in our business. This is not a supply issue. You know, where the trucks stop coming. It's a logistics issue. The trucks have to get here to Florida. Some truckers, we heard a story, a trucking company in Spring Hill, Florida, the truckers had to sign affidavits that they're not sick. They're not allowed into the loading docks. They're given them, the rest stops are enclosed. So interesting enough, the challenges have really been logistics, which are on our hands, you know, and if you can't get the goods to the market, you know, there's plenty of supply. It's just we're in a peninsula and it takes time for groceries to show up from Georgia or from New Jersey or from New York.
Yeah.
And so I think, you know, the grocery stores could go through this hurry up and wait mode where they have all the stock because people are panic buying and, you know, to having nothing in certain areas where they have to wait for the next stock. The stores are packed, as you can imagine. The interesting thing is, what I like to mention, there's a whole socio-economic, cultural thing that's going on here in South Florida. If you look at, we serve a lot of these ethnic markets, and they're mostly Latin American, Haitians, and they shop very much like the French, Italians do. They shop for 1-2 days. They've always done that, you know. And Boca and the Publix, it's cleaned out. It looks like Venezuela. You know, they've cleaned up the shelves because people will buy $200, $300, $400, $500, $800 at a time. Well, not everybody has that budget, and so you will go to a lot of the ethnic markets. They're full. They're completely full of food. You might not find toilet paper and Purell, but they're jam packed of goods. So it's an interesting thing that is happening. How shoppers, the way people shop has had an impact reflected in those stores that are stocked versus those stores that are not stocked.
Yeah. No, that's actually a really insightful and interesting point. I know I was trying to just find some meat at Publix 2 days ago. Couldn't find anything except for bizarrely chuck roast was in abundance. But then I went to Mazzaro's, which is our local Italian market, jam-packed with product, no problem at all. Same thing with Oceanic, which is a local Asian market. No problem at all. They had everything you could think of on the aisles. So we do have a quick question from the audience. Let me, that was the high sign. We got to be wrapping the segment up, but I want to get one more question into Eugene before we close out here. And not to end on a negative note, but you know, there was an announcement that Creative Loafing was letting off, I think 70% of their workforce. Times just said they're getting rid of 11 of their reporters. Not asking you a question if you guys are downsizing, but how is this event going to change, or does it change reporting? With all the doom and gloom out there, is there more of an onus on the reporters to find some happy stories to help bolster people's moods?
Well, I think there's sort of an onus on all of us, not just the media, but to find those things. You know, whether it's coronavirus or almost anything in the daily news, it's depressing. News is not very exciting, and you know, happy puppy stories don't sell newspapers. That being said, I think that there's an inevitability for some newspapers that this sort of sped up the process. I don't know how much longer the Times was going to last, unfortunately, and I don't want to see Times go anywhere. We need a daily newspaper, and certainly a very direct cause of Creative Loafing is that I believe a majority of their advertising comes from restaurants and entertainment industry. So hopefully they can bounce back because we will, you know, the life will go on. For the Times, I'm not so sure. As far as we go at La Gaceta, we're a very small shop, so you know, it hasn't affected us that way. And because we're such a niche newspaper, you know, entertainment venues and restaurants, things aren't our, you know, meat and potatoes, so to speak. So I believe will be okay. I can't say the same thing for the other ones,
Yeah,
but I hope they
unfortunate.
do well.
All right. Well, with that, we need to wrap up this particular segment. Tom, Gene, thank you both so much for spending a few minutes with us. Just get some news out there, how different industries are reacting to this crisis. And for everyone else at home, are we back for one more segment?
Yeah,
We'll be back.
to talk about mortgages, finances, and interest rates.
Fantastic. So if you're interested in financing, come back for the next segment. We'll see you in a few minutes. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, Gene. All right, everybody, welcome back. You've been joining us all morning. Again, my name is Tyler Martin-Nolich, Film Commissioner for Hillsborough County. We've been talking to all types of different industries this morning. We thank all of our guests that have come before. Joining us again is Glenn to my right. And then we have a new guest, Ken Ingram from the Bank of England Mortgage. I wanted to make sure I said that right. Just to talk about financing and how things are affecting the global markets at the moment. And maybe you might have noticed your credit lines might be disappearing. So we want to answer some of those questions. Before we get there, you've already told us how you're doing, but how are you doing personally, Ken?
Shorts and flip-flops. I've been working at home. Our company has sent everybody home to try and stay safe. We've been all working from home for about a week, and we didn't see much of a speed bump as far as operations go, and we've all been able to maintain our health, which is great. I thought I was dressing up today when I came in shorts and flip-flops. I mean, that's probably an improvement from what I've been doing at home. That being said, I do have to disclose any of my opinions are my opinions and not those of Bank of England Mortgage.
Yes, and if any suggestions come out of your mouth for how people should react to this, is a suggestion only. Make sure you consult a financial planner.
You've got it.
There we go. We got the disclaimers out of the way. So let's start. We were talking offline right before this segment started that people might be seeing their credit lines shrinking or businesses getting zapped, your words, the last couple of days in response to this. What is going on?
Well, I think it started about 10 days ago, maybe 2 weeks ago even. Some real big players were making recommendations to small businesses and large businesses to take down their credit lines, to extract any credit they had before they do get zapped. And that did happen with some real big companies. It started, as things started, let's just think about it this way. If your company was a publicly traded company and your stock is down 30% and all of your credit is predicated on a value at 100%, now you're not as credit worthy as you were before. So they start to reduce your credit lines and make some notes payable, call them due. They have now worked their way down to some smaller players, and they're looking at it with the unemployment forecasts and everything going on. I believe that the thought might be that the risk is increased and that due to small businesses getting hit so hard, they're reducing credit lines, and probably in an effort to keep people from surviving on credit.
Yeah.
So we saw the similar things happen in 2008 with home equity lines. Of course, as the real estate value went down, the banks reduced our available credit on home equity lines, and I believe the same thing's kind of happening for small business owners right now. And if it hasn't happened yet, it's probably a real good time to analyze your situation and figure out how much of that you may need going forward, and talk to your financial advisor about whether or not to make a move on it.
Yeah. There's a lot of fear out there. People, again, maybe looking at their credit lines or just their client list dwindling as far as active projects they have through this crisis. I know the state just activated some emergency bridge loan opportunities. Again, consult your own financial advisors, but just you personally, is this a great time to be taking on extra debt? I would think not.
Well, that's a really good question, and I think it's going to be specific to each individual. I think that survival is going to be really important, and you're going to have some people with different levels of hope and different levels of strength. I think everybody needs to collaborate and get with their advisors and take a close look at the situation before they do borrow and get into more debt to continue going on.
So as a homeowner myself, what's going on with the mortgage industry?
Well, how much time do we have?
You got 7 minutes.
All right. Well, I don't.
Maybe less.
A lot of this rolls off my lips very easily because that's all I've been doing the last week is explaining what's going on, and I'm not going to use technical terms. We're going to just kind of talk big picture stuff. We started off with a huge decrease in interest rates a couple of weeks ago, spurred on a massive refinance wave, which was probably 4 to 5 times an annual average capacity for refinancing. So we sucked up all the capacity of all the lenders out there and banks and filled up their pipelines. And at the same time, with all of the uncertainty out there in the market, the mortgage-backed securities that are on sale that are the result of the refinances have become less valuable and less desirable, therefore being purchased less. And so it's creating a bottleneck. And because of that, even though, based on all of the numbers, our interest rates should be low, we've got a couple things going on. We've got a supply and demand issue. I mean, if we gave a refinance to everybody who wanted one right now, we wouldn't be able to get those moved out into mortgage-backed securities. And then there was also a capacity issue. If we can close 500 widgets a month and 5,000 people want a widget, then normally the price goes up for the widget.
Yeah.
So that's happened. And then lastly, I would say that there's some risk-based pricing going on. And that's got things to do, that's encouraging changes, industry-wide, because when we start projecting a high level of unemployment, everybody involved in the process has to ask themselves, does that also mean that these people may not be able to make their mortgage payments?
Sure.
So that would also drive rates up. So that being said, still a great time to buy a house or refinance, and we'd love to work with you, but we're all proceeding cautiously.
Yeah.
It's just one day at a time, watching the situation very closely, and we're just doing everything we can to give the best advice and give the best programs we can.
Sure. So good time to buy a house, but is it a smart time to list a house? If you're looking to sell, if you can weather the storm, would you recommend waiting?
Well, it all depends on what your motivation is. I think that we're going to see, those people who were considering downsizing over the last year. There's lots of due to the age of our population, we've got a lot of people right there on the edge. They're saying, we've been empty nesters for a long time. We'd sure like to get into that condo or get into that smaller home, and this may speed that up a little bit.
Yeah.
It's all about the motivation.
Sure.
If you're looking to make a profit, I don't know. But if you're looking, to reduce your expenses and sell, then maybe that is a good time.
Fair. Just going back to the idea that we might have shrinking credit lines for particularly production companies that are reliant on those credit lines to, weather the tide from one job to the next to get their employees paid before their client ever, pays them back. A lot of clients pay on a net 30 or a net 90, which is a little ridiculous, but it's what our industry does. What are some financial mechanisms they might be able to take advantage of during this period to help them weather the storm, if there's any you can think of?
Well, that's a good question. That's part of the reason I was talking about analyzing the credit that you do have and perhaps taking it down immediately before somebody else does. And it doesn't mean you have to spend the money, but having some liquidity is going to be real important. And that's a good reason to take a look at what's available. So, if we're talking about tapping your credit lines for survival and to be able to float these invoices, then to me, that seems like a no-brainer.
Yeah.
Because we're going to talk about government programs being available and everything, but again, I think we're going to run into some supply and demand issues there. I would probably take what's available first and don't spend the money. That way you can pay your debts back should things not go the way you expect. I wouldn't use that credit for survival and lose the ability to float those invoices.
Yeah. So Glenn, to bring you into the conversation,
Sure.
What are you personally doing, if you want to share some of that information, to financially weather the storm? And have you given any recommendations to some of the clients or production companies you've worked with?
No, I haven't really had any discussions with any of my clients. I wait for them to contact me with work. In terms personally, my wife and I are probably going to sit down this weekend and talk about, our finances. She handles a lot of the finances in the house. I'm one of those guys who's just like, you got it, I'll try and make money, and she makes money, and it all goes in, and then I see her paying bills. I probably should be more on top of my finances than I am. But there are times when I'm just like, I don't want to know. I kind of operate on the, we're not doing well. She might say, no, we're good, we're fine. And I'm always operating on the assumption that we're not. I don't want to know if I'm comfortable. I just sort of like to be uncomfortable. So it motivates me to just keep grinding and working and trying to make money.
Yeah.
So I just kind of like wait for that day when she says,
hey, we need to talk about our finances. And that hasn't happened yet, but I think this weekend we're just going to be like, how are we doing for the next couple of months? Because again, she's not going to be working. And if work's slowing down for me, then we're going to have to be like, yeah, maybe we don't go out and, go out to eat or whatever.
Yeah. Well, if you can find a restaurant that's open.
Yeah, but if they do, if according to the news, if this sort of mortgage forgiveness thing happens over the next 12 months, then that could be kind of cool.
Yeah, I won't say no.
On that, I did see Bank of America make a post stating that they were doing a 2-month mortgage forgiveness.
Yeah.
I don't know what hoops people are going to have to jump through to get that, but
Right.
that was interesting to see that out already.
Yeah.
Well, this is a shorter segment than our previous one, so we need to wrap this up for a second. Before we do, just to let everyone know we have one more segment coming up, so please tune back in after the break. But I also want to say that we'll be doing a couple more of these as the crisis continues, just to help bring the community together, share some information, and see how different segments of the industry and just Tampa Bay at large is doing. If you want to participate, there'll be a way to reach out to everyone. Certainly through the website that you were streaming or we're streaming through right now. But if you want to participate, have a logo or be one of our interview guests, please let us know. There's plenty of ways to help connect and join in to the conversation. So with that, we'll break for a few more minutes. We'll come back with some more guests. Last segment. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Quiet on the set.
Welcome back, everybody, for our final segment. I appreciate everyone who's joined in today. Again, my name is Tyler Martin-Nolich, Film Commissioner for Hillsborough County. We've been talking every segment with various people from the industry, but also just Tampa Bay at large to see what the temperature is out there and get people's thoughts on the crisis and how they're weathering it individually, no matter what industry they're coming from. This last segment, we're focusing on education. Joining us via Skype, thank you very much, is Aaron Walker, professor at the University of Tampa, a friend and a great advocate for filming in the local film community, both on the Pinellas and Hillsborough side. So thank you, Aaron, for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome. So really quickly, thank you guys for doing this live stream. It's pretty important to find ways to reach out in the community as readily as we can. So it's pretty great. Thank you.
I appreciate that. And to that end, let's start with a personal question. How are you and the family doing right now?
Well, so everything's weird, right? It's one of those real experiences most of us have had. So both my wife and I are university professors. I teach at UT. She's at USF in a different department, different field. And it's been very day by day and disruptive. That said, we're just kind of hanging out at home and doing the home thing. So it's not the most challenging basic daily circumstances for us. We're doing fine. We have some, family worries and those types of. In general, we're doing fine. Thanks. Yeah. How are you doing?
You know what? I'm finding new ways to entertain myself at home.
Right.
I think I said in the very first segment, this was the first day that I can remember in 6 years that I woke up to 0 new emails in my box.
Right. I'm going to change that. I'm just going to send you random otter videos.
Everyone in Tampa Bay is going to be sending me stuff now. But that was a sobering moment, right? Normally I wake up and I'm sitting there trying to drag myself out of bed, and the first thing I do is I check my email, and there was just nothing new. Never had that happen before, at least that I can remember. So let's talk about what's going on at the University of Tampa, and I think what's happening at UT is probably analogous to everything that's happening at other universities, at least in the state. So where are you guys at? You've canceled classes and you're switching in-person classes.
Correct. Yeah. So classes are not canceled. They are. They've been converted over to online delivery. If you don't mind, I think that the university is different than most of the other in some way, because there's this huge population of students that are resident on your campus, and so most administrations nationwide have really struggled with it. And what it meant is that we were fortunate to be on spring during the unraveling of the crisis, but it meant that day by day, it was just extraordinarily unclear with what would happen. Everybody experiences this, but for students who were worried about, possibly being displaced, having to go home, it was pretty disruptive. At University of Tampa, since we were on spring break, most students had, gone to spring break or something along those lines, and they got a notification that said, hey, please don't come back. Is a big deal. What that meant for us when we're trying to deliver classes is that we can't assume that they have their computer systems in film production. So I have students who don't have a camera, don't have anything readily available. So it's been very stressful to transfer everything to online. I think some universities have been better at it than others, but day by day, I get questions from students that are about the coursework, and they're also about, hey, how do I live life like this? What do I do? And I'll tell you, I think there's a mixture of boredom and anxiety with the students and a real fear. It's probably, most of the students are of a generation, they lived through the 2008 crash as children, and now they're pretty uncertain. And those who are graduating are very unclear as to what's going to happen to them. So there's a lot of anxiety with the students. For professors, it's we have to solve pretty practical problems, and it has not been fun, but it's, we're getting there. Fortunately, in media, organizations like Adobe, organizations have been freeing up their licenses. Yeah. So they've been tremendous partners for education. Without that, we literally could not deliver.
No, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe I saw where Adobe has canceled the subscriptions for most of their products for the next 2 months. Or not canceled, they suspended the payments.
Yeah, there's some type, every one of these organizations, there's also another one that I just reached called Frame.io. Every one of the organizations, these corporate entities, they've essentially built a new license somehow. So they're all a little bit different, but they range for the next 2 to 3 months, some type of a component students can get their hands on the software.
So we'll turn it to the students here in a second, but from a faculty standpoint, what are some of the lessons you were learning through this process that you can future-proof your core curriculum going forward if something like this happens again, to be more friendly to a stay-at-home or a mobile type classroom?
Yeah, so there's a real irony in my own work here as an educator, because in a film production class, part I want to do is teach traditional studio-based and crew-based practice. And a lot of the students come in and they've got thriving YouTube channels, or they're TikTok ready or whatever. They're all in these other modes where they've had access to the tools of social media, video, and now need to have some of the other skills for much more traditional film. So a lot of my time goes into, this is how you organize a set. This is what your f-stop is. This is all this stuff. Don't use your cell phone. Get away from your cell phone. And now I'm like, well, no cameras. You've got your camera in your pocket, so like that. So right now we're scrambling to figure out how to maintain some type of action unit, something like that, where students can get equivalent knowledge with severe restrictions. That said, film production, as everybody watching Upstream knows, is all about restrictions. It's all your budget, your crew, your location. And so one of the lessons we sort of have to teach now is how to continue to be productive within these types of things. In terms of future-proofing it, for me, it's a crash course in how do I deliver any of this stuff online? So I've been locked in my room recording tutorials like I'm some weirdo. I'm trying to come up with a good YouTube tutorial intro, outro. Don't have any options yet, but okay, Professor Walker, and it's movie time. So I'm working on that stuff now, but we do have an obligation to deliver thought-provoking work and allow students to work remotely in all sorts of constraints. What it's to do is think about longer disruptions that might come up in things like hurricanes or any number of other things. So I've been doing a lot of thinking. I haven't really resolved it yet. But film production's hard in this space, man.
It really is. There's so much value in just being able to communally talk with other filmmakers, your professors, your peers. I thought it was really interesting, Netflix's response by creating essentially a Google Hangout that would run with any of their live streaming so that people could still watch and engage and talk. Are you still feeling, or do you feel that the students are still connected in this moment in time, or is this just dispersed to everybody?
That's a really good question. I think everyone's going to have an individual response to that. I think that there's two versions of that. I personally feel much more disconnected from them. I'm, blasting out these emails the whole class, and I've had a couple of Skype office hour meetings, Skype-based office hour meetings, and since they're dispersed to who knows where, I think that they're, used to connecting to their classmates down the hall of the dorm or something like that, or on Instagram or in those spaces, and so I've noticed that they've been displacing a lot of those conversations into these other social media platforms. So I think they're connecting in those forms, but it's unclear to me if that's productive. I don't know. I think that the students I've spoken to are feeling isolated.
Yeah, and I certainly feel the same way. I just don't have that. As much as I enjoy the opportunity to work from home, I also enjoy being in an office environment where I can walk around and talk to people and engage them and bounce things back. You don't always have that one-to-one with a lot of social media stuff. I'm getting the high side. We need to wrap up, but I want to have one final question to you. What should students be doing right now to be proactive? Spring break is done. Obviously, they have their own coursework they need to keep up on, but what can they be doing to improve their reel or become more organized or find other educational opportunities?
Well, I think that there's kind of three things that they need to do. So they complete their work, their coursework in the best and most creative way they can. They actually have a responsibility to do that, and they can't really expect their professors to fill in all those. But as you know, in the classroom, students who challenge or work in or create something new out of restriction always do more interesting work.
Yeah.
So it's a skill that they need to pick up. Earlier, I heard you talking about like online education and tutorials. There's so much of this stuff that's free. You can get, you can go through certification courses, your technical training in those spaces, and really pick those certifications up now, in addition to considering going on to other education. And then the last thing that I tell students, you know, I teach film. I'm a pretty traditional filmmaker. I tell them, like, you've got all this time, you're locked at home. Watch more movies, man.
Yeah.
You go through, there's so much that you can stream right now. This is an amazing opportunity to do this, to build up your personal catalog and find out a little bit more about what moves you. And then you'll be ready to move out into the world with even more of a developed taste. So as something, but I'm also, it's hard to time a student to be ready, but we are going to really need these, not immediately when this crisis is done, but in 2 or 3 years, when we're going to have to really consider who and what we are. We're going to need them to help those stories. So I'm telling them to pay attention, watch the world. And right now, that's all that I know to do. So that's it.
That's great advice for everybody. So we got to wrap it up here, Aaron. Thank you so much for being my last guest today. It's been a marathon all morning, but we appreciate everyone tuning in, and certainly to all the students, not only at UT, but just in the Bay Area at large. Great opportunity to be creative at home. So thank you, everybody that joined us online. Once again, my name is Tyler Martinovich, Film Commissioner for Hillsborough County. I want to thank Custom Built for hosting us today. I really appreciate that. We're going to be doing, that was Pete, the owner, around the corner, and Frank's behind the camera. We'll be doing a couple more of these at least next Friday. If you want to tune in again, we'll be inviting more people back to join us to talk about what's going on in the community. And certainly if you want to participate, let us know. If you want to have your logo or figure out a way to, if you're a small business and want to offer a coupon on air, we'll do anything we can to help connect the Bay Area. So please engage with us. We'll figure out ways to help you participate in what we're doing. So with that, please stay safe, healthy. Appreciate everyone tuning in. Thanks.